Okay, Mom, I just wet my whistle here. Back to chapter 26, A Living Book. Or not back to it, we're starting it. It was the other chapter I had to break up. A Living Book. One of the greatest gifts the Lord ever gave me was the courage to fight against the spirits of evil. The only thing the soul should ever be afraid of is offending God. Our Lord and King is all-powerful. There is nothing he cannot do. He rules over all created things. All we have to do is walk in truth, walk with a pure conscience, walk in the presence of His Majesty, and we will have nothing to fear. That's why I wanted to live in a state of perpetual awe. I did not want to risk for any instant offending the one who could annihilate us in an instant. If His Majesty is pleased with us, then anyone who is against us will end up clapping his hands to his head in despair. We can accept this truth at face value and move on, or we can inquire more deeply. Who is this soul who lives such an upright life that she pleases God completely and can rightfully conclude that she has nothing to fear? Not my soul. My soul is wretched, worthless, and overflowing with 1,000 miseries. But the ways of God are different than the ways of human beings. He understands our weaknesses. Through deep inner examination, the soul discovers that she truly loves God. Once a soul reaches an advanced state of prayer, love doesn't hide as it did in the beginning. It is driven by a powerful impulse and accompanied by such an intense yearning to see God that everything else wearies the soul and wears her out. I've already said this, and I will say it again. Anything other than God is a torment to the soul who is in love with Him. If she is not resting in Him, she is restless. This love does not come in disguise. It is completely revealed. There was a time when I was suffering from a continuous stream of criticism from the people of Avila and from the Carmelite order. I had countless opportunities to be grief-stricken. That was when the Lord said to me, "Why are you afraid? Don't you know that I am all-powerful? I will fulfill my promises to you." And He has. His voice so thoroughly strengthened me that I felt I could embark on any new venture in service of the one I love, even if it caused me even more severe trials. I would gladly take on more suffering for His sake. This has happened to me more times than I can count. Sometimes He would scold me. Sometimes He still scolds me when I make mistakes. These divine criticisms are enough to dissolve my soul, but at least they motivate me to change, because His Majesty's words are both counsel and cure. At other times, especially when His Majesty wants to grant me some exceptional favor, it reminds me of my past transgressions. Then I feel as if it is Judgment Day, and I have to account for my whole life. These spiritual voices present the truth with such penetrating clarity that I have nowhere to hide. Sometimes the Lord warns me of imminent danger to myself or to others. He has often told me about things that were going to happen 3 or 4 years in the future. All these things have come true. I can give you concrete examples. There are so many signs showing that these spiritual voices come from God that we have no excuse for doubting them. The Lord has often told me the safest course to follow: make sure your spiritual director is a learned man, and then tell him everything. Explain the whole state of my soul to him, and describe in detail the favors the Lord grants me. Obey him. When I don't take this path, I'm not at peace. Of course, since women have no learning, how can we expect to have peace? I had a confessor who badly humiliated me. He seems to purposely disquiet my mind by presenting me with constant challenges and utterly distressing me. Looking back, I think he is a spiritual director who did me the most good. Although I was very fond of him, I was often tempted to leave him because his methods interfered with my prayer. But every time I considered ending the relationship, I would hear a voice telling me not to. This divine rebuke upset me more than anything my confessor did. I had questions on the one hand and reproofs on the other. The process exhausted me, but I was so stubborn that my will would never bend unless it was worn out. The Lord once told me that if I wasn't resolved in suffix, then I was not truly submitting. The Lord once told me that if I wasn't resolved to suffer, then I was not truly submitting. He said that if I would simply fix my eyes on what He had suffered, everything would be easy. After it was determined that the spiritual voice I was hearing indeed came from the Good Spirit, a man who heard my confession advised me that it would be best if I kept quiet and didn't mention them to anyone. Such things should not be talked about, he said. This did not strike me as wrong. Whenever I told my spiritual director about the voices, I felt so abashed that my shame was worse than when I had serious sins to confess. I expected that my confessors would not believe me and would make fun of me, especially when the divine favor is dramatic. My resistance to talking through the voices was so intense. My resistance to talking about the voices was so intense because it felt like revealing these things was so disrespectful to the wonders of God, so it was best to remain silent. But I came to understand that this confessor had advised me badly, and that I should not keep anything from my spiritual director. There is great security in telling him everything, and great danger in keeping secrets. Whenever the Lord told me to do something in prayer, and my confessor told me something else, the Lord would speak again and tell me to obey him. Then he would change my confessor's mind so that he would agree with what the Lord had said. When the Inquisition banned many books written in Spanish, I was bereft. Reading was such a joy for me. The only sanctioned books were in Latin, which I could not understand. Then the Lord spoke to me. "Don't be sad," he said, "for I shall give you a living book." Since I had not yet experienced any visions, I couldn't understand why God would say this to me. A few days later, I understood this perfectly. The Lord gathered me into his presence, showed me his love by teaching me in so many ways, and gave me so much to think about that I have had almost no need for books ever since. His Majesty himself has become the living book in which all truths are available. Blessed be such a book that indelibly imprints on our minds everything we need to understand and do. Who could possibly see Christ persecuted and covered with wounds without embracing, loving, and longing for those wounds? Who could witness the glory God gives those who serve him without recognizing that anything we do and suffer is nothing in light of such a reward? Who could imagine the torment of those who are condemned to the fire without realizing that the trials of this life are sheer delights by comparison, and appreciating how much she owes the Lord for so often freeing her from that place? With God's help, I will say more than I can. With God's help, I will say more about these things later. For now, I'd like to get on with the account of my life. May it please the Lord that I have been clear in what I have said so far. I'm sure that anyone with experience will understand me and see that I have been successful. I wouldn't be surprised, however, if all sounded like nonsense to someone without experience. Since I am the one telling the story, I wouldn't blame anyone who might dismiss it as nonsense. He would have a good excuse. May the Lord help me to do his will. Okay, so that's the end of the short chapter of the Living Book, and then we have chapter 27, The Perils of Temperance, and I'm going to take a break right now because I've been reading a while. All right, love you, Mom, and I will talk to you later, read with you later, and have a beautiful day. And it is Saturday the 30th of September, first day of October is tomorrow. All right, it's already October there. Love you.